What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Steelers Hangover. I'm your Curtain Network host, Daniel, alongside with me, as always, Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing wonderful. We actually got in the 90s today.
Oh,
I know
really?
you're used to them hot temperatures and everything, but we're not. So we hit a 90, anything, it's hot. But it was a real pretty day, but we're just dry. I mean,
No,
it's
I hear
it's
you.
kind of a drought right now, and we're supposed to get back in the high 70s and get some rain later this weekend. We need it.
Amen to that. I hope we just got a lot of rain. Not to lie to you, because of this whole hurricane
Yeah,
stuff that
you
was
got
coming around.
Hurricane Burrow. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we got a lot of rain. But it cooled things down. It's been nice. Yesterday was in the 80s. Today it was in the
Oh,
90s,
good,
but
good.
yesterday it was in the 80s. It's quite nice. It was quite
Yeah.
nice. But weather aside,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Um, that we got some breaking news that happened earlier today. The Steelers announced that they're going to be having a joint practice with the Buffalo Bills ahead of their preseason game. Do you like it? Dislike it? Pros, cons? What do you think about the joint practice there between the Steelers and the Bills?
Oh, I love it. A lot of people don't know that we have the Greenbrier here in West Virginia. It's a really nice resort, and they got a full football field, and a lot of teams come and do their training camp there at in West Virginia at the Greenbrier,
Hmm.
and other teams will come in and they'll have joint practices there, and sometimes you can go up and watch, and I think it's a great thing because you get tired of hitting your teammates over and over and over. You're wanting to hit somebody else, and you see how you measure up because you may look really good against your teammates. Say you're a wide receiver and you're going up and your cornerbacks ain't too good, on your team, and you think you're better than you really are, and then you go up against somebody good, and they're going to shut you down. So I think it's good to have these joint practices, and I know they're doing it right before they have their preseason game, where they play the Bills. And so I think it's a good exposure and experience and give them a taste of action against somebody else of NFL quality before, they, start the regular season.
Yeah, 100%. I think also the players that are going to benefit this the most are going to be the ones that are fighting for the 53, 52, 51, man roster, those positions on
Exactly.
the
Yep.
roster. The preseason's dropped a game. There's only 3 games now, and the losers in that situation are those at the bottom end of the depth chart. And I think this is a great thing for the Pittsburgh Steelers to see who they have and what they have in their young guys and who they're going to want moving forward. Because, as I mentioned, I think they're going to want to get a good dosage of of the starters. I mean, just because there's so many new pieces, I know that Russ. I was thinking about it. I was like, I think he might end up playing probably more than what we would have expected, like Ben Roethlisberger to play when he was 35,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
mainly because he's new to this team and
Mm-hmm.
offense, and and they need to gel. I mean, the offensive line is probably going to be brand new as well, so I think they need to build that camaraderie, and it's probably going to happen in the preseason. And so those guys at the bottom end of the depth chart aren't going to have that many chances out there or opportunities to show what they got. So doing this joint practice, I think, is really in their favor.
You can only practice so much. Then you got to have live reps to really see what you have. Uh, and as you say, a lot of these guys that are, even Russell Wilson at 35 or whatever he is, he's new. This is a new system. It's a new team, new teammates, and these guys need reps. And by that part of the preseason, hopefully we'll know what the Steelers have at quarterback. Hopefully Wilson will grab a hold of it if he's meant to be the starter, and then they'll say, okay, we're going to plan these packages for Fields, but still having that live reps has great value.
I agree. The only person I think that might be a little bit kind of iffy about it is probably Mr. Trubisky, backup quarterback for the Bills, going to be returning back to the Bird for practice. That's going to be interesting. That'll be
Well, hopefully
interesting.
he throws us a couple.
Right? Exactly. So, yeah, overall, I think it's a good thing. The other thing I think as well, we're probably going to see some. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of Bills players on the practice squad at the end of the preseason. Mike Tomlin likes to get an extended look at certain players. And typically when the preseason's over, when we're filling up the bottom end of the depth chart, whether it be those guys like I said, at the 52nd, 53rd position or on the practice squad, it usually comes from players that the Pittsburgh Steelers played against through in the preseason. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few Bills added to this roster at the end of the preseason.
And Tomlin has a long relationship with Sean McDermott.
That's true.
So, yeah, I mean, he's, these coaches talk, and they're like, man, we hate to cut this guy, and we hate to, see him not make the roster, but, he'd be somebody you ought to consider. So, that stuff happens.
I agree. I'm excited for it. I hope there's some way that some footage can come out. I know that I believe the final practice that they have, there's going to be at Heinz. Oh man, I called it Heinz at Acrisure Stadium.
I do it all the time.
sometimes I do it because I want to.
Yes, yes.
But I think that's going to be a game atmosphere as well. I hope we can get some footage of it. I'll be excited to see it.
Oh yeah.
So today's topic is going to be, will the past Steelers success propel the Steelers now and into the future, or what does the past mean now? To better off summer up. Shannon, you wanted to pick this topic. Let's kind of start with you. What do you think about the past and how it affects the current Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, sometimes it's something that you feel good about, and sometimes it's something that you don't. Like every year, like last year, I'm like, well, the Steelers, or the last time they went to Philadelphia, let's say, to play, I'm like, well, that's a loss. I just check it up as a loss because they can't play in Philadelphia. Oh, they're going to the West Coast. Well, that's a loss because they don't play well on the West Coast. But then you look, and then you realize, well, that was in the past. That doesn't affect the future, or the present. It's up to the present day players what happens. Ben Roethlisberger didn't play well when he went to the West Coast. The whole team didn't. But that doesn't mean that this team's going to suffer the same fate. Steelers go to Philadelphia, they used to get killed. But that doesn't mean this time it will happen again. So, and then there's other things you say, well, Tomlin's never had a losing record. And I'm like, I can't believe all these prognosticators are saying that the Steelers are going to finish under 500 because don't they know that Tomlin never has a losing record? But what if this is the first year he does? Because it really matters. It only matters what these present day players that end up making the roster can do. And so I think that a lot of things is kind of hyperbole, or it's, it's easy for these announcers because they don't follow the Steelers like we do. How long have we heard the Steelers are a power running football team, even though they haven't been a power running football team for years? Or the Steelers are a hard-nosed, hard-hitting defense, and they were the middle of the pack. You know what I'm saying? It's like reputation precedes you, but the reputation might have nothing to do with what this Steelers squad looks like. So that's kind of the things I think we ought to discuss on this show, because some of it it's going to be totally different. My perfect example was last year. What did we all say about Mike Tomlin? He loves the bell cow running back. Mm-hmm. I mean, he drive him in the ground. He run Le'Veon Bell till his wheels come off. But now he's got Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. And what did he do last year? It was a much more closer 50-50 split because the talent was there. So Tomlin showed the ability to adapt and use the talent on hand, which you got to admire him for that. Well, I think we as fans have to not live in the past, but live in the present.
I agree, and I think another thing that can be looked at with this analogy is the fact that, this Steelers team is different than the teams that they have been even recently. I think that, well, what did we hear a lot in the last couple of years? That maybe perhaps they lost the Steelers' way. There's no leaders on offense. Yeah. That's been the thing that's been going on. And I think the Steelers have, they identified the problem and they have released those issues, and a lot of them. And so the guys that they've brought in have been some more of the character on the better side of the character side of things. And I think that these guys are going to be the leaders that are going to propel this team to where you want them to go in and off the field. And I think that the Steelers have retained those that are talented and may have had an attitude still, or maybe perhaps wasn't the best behaved, like a George Pickens, and are hoping that they can mold him still yet because he's so young into something that's, um, something that they should expect out of a Pittsburgh Steelers football player. And so I completely agree with you that this team has been changing.
Yes.
It is completely changed. It's completely different. The attitude of the team is different. I think that they have the right mindset. They got the leaders that they got several leaders now on offense and defense. I think Russell Wilson, I don't know how he's going to play this season. I don't think anybody's going to know until he laces them up and gets out there.
Yeah.
But what he's done so far
Mhm.
is he's taken this offense and he's run with it. He's taken responsibility of it. He has demonstrated not only to the team but to the fan base with everything that he's put online and his social media, things like that. I wasn't the biggest Russell Wilson fan, prior to his
Me
signing.
neither. Me neither.
I'll be honest.
Yep.
I wasn't thrilled. But as he came on, he's kind of won me over to give him an opportunity. And I'm excited to see what he can do with that chance.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Everybody knows I did not want Russell Wilson. I just had, I heard some bad things at Denver. I seen some problems with some teammates late in Seattle. But again, sometimes, we all, as we age, we should get smarter. And, he hasn't had the success the last 2 years that he had gotten accustomed to in Seattle. And I think now he might be a little more humble. Now he might be a little bit more receptive to counsel and to instruction and to a new scheme. And he has a coach he respects, which I don't think he's had since Pete Carroll. And you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of different variables there. So I'm more than willing to give him a chance. And I want him to be successful. All Steeler fans should want him to be successful because that's going to mean the Steelers are successful. And so, I'm like you. I'm getting excited about it. The more I hear, and he's doing the right things. The Steelers, you mentioned it, they have drafted guys. All these guys have been team captains, leaders of the offense, leaders on defense, character guys off the field, coachable. The Steelers have a culture. A lot of teams are dying to have a culture. What's the Cleveland Browns culture? They don't got one. What's the Cincinnati Bengals culture? They haven't had anything until just recently, and they're trying to develop one. The Steelers have had one for 3 decades, 4 decades. But you have to have players that are receptive to that message. You have to have players that are willing to pass that culture on that was passed down to them from their predecessors. And I think the Steelers are finding that kind of character guys who are also extremely talented. I mean, some of these guys they brought in these last couple of drafts, I think they've been great value just based on talent alone, but they are high character guys.
I agree. I think it's, you have to have it both ways. I mean,
Yep.
the Steelers have had some high talented players in the past, and when you can't control it and they get out of hand, it becomes a cancer to the team, and
Yep.
it starts to fall apart, and that's not what we want. And like you said, the culture here also I think plays into effect why the Steelers have gone so long without a losing season. I think that those things do kind of go hand in hand. So when you do come up with, does the past affect the present? Maybe it does to a certain extent because, with past comes experience and with experience comes knowledge. So with that going forward, this team knows how to win, and it's because their leaders know how to win. And when it's down, in the fourth quarter and you need somebody to go in there and do something, it typically gets done with this team. I mean, I think Mike Tomlin in fourth quarter or one possession games has like an amazing record in one possession games. And that goes between Ben, Kenny Pickett, or whoever was a quarterback. So yeah, I mean, that all starts off with culture and a little bit of the past, so to speak. But I also think that there is something about when they have like alumni week and they have some of the past guys come up.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a different feel to those games and potentially even the practices. What do you think about those situations?
Oh, I think it's so important. I mean, we've talked about it. Mike Tomlin, he has the respect of the players. But we haven't really focused on the positional coaches. Let's think back when the Steelers won their last Super Bowls. under Dick LeBeau and Dick LeBeau players, that had previously been with him. Those were the last good defensive playoff games and Super Bowls that the Steelers had, was under Dick LeBeau. And then we started to see that diminish to where their last 5 playoff losses have been blowouts, and the defense ain't been able to stop anybody. But I remember that they honored Dick LeBeau, wore his jersey. I mean, they wanted to play for him. It was like a special relationship. Tomlin has that special relationship. Keith Butler, a little bit, but not so much since then. Offensive coordinator, when was the last guy? I think that Ben and Bruce Arians had a good relationship. But Ben was basically his own offensive coordinator. Him and Haley was always kind of going at it. But I think we're starting to see some of these offensive coordinator, the defense coordinator. Hopefully they're developing a relationship that it's going to create. These players want to play for them, and they trust them. I mean, nobody trusted Matt Canada's offense, and you've seen it, and you heard about it. People would speak out and get benched the rest of the year. It was a mess. It really was, and it wasn't Steeler like, and it wasn't the Steeler culture. And I didn't see anybody step up from the players, like a T.J. Watt, a Cam Hayward, a leader. And the Steelers really didn't have that on offense after Ben retired. That would be that bridge between to point out the problem and communicate with Tomlin in the front office. So I think that all these changes that have been made is a good thing.
They definitely are. And that's what you need to do in order to be successful, is be able to adapt.
Yes.
And adapting we will. And with that, we're going to take a break real quick. Don't go anywhere. We just got a few words from our sponsors. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel, alongside with me is Shannon White. This is the Hangover. We're talking about the Steelers past and present and how they affect each other, if they do at all. But before we get back into the content, I want to remind you guys of SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Go check that out once you're done listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube. And you can see our plenty of articles that are being written daily about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then you can also check out the other audio-only podcasts, the ones that you guys are probably missing that are out there that we do, including mine, which airs out on Fridays at around noon. So don't want to miss it. It's called State of the Steelers on Steel Curtain Network, and that's on anywhere you find a podcast. It's not on YouTube. It's on audio only. So make sure you go and find that and check it out. I know you haven't written anything in a while. You have anything coming up here pretty soon, Shannon, for the website?
We're going to see, like I said, there's been some things that we're taking care of, family issues as far as health, and the Lord's blessing, and things are improving. And I'm hoping that closer to training camp, we'll be able to get back and at least put out a few articles, because we got the Brett Kiesel Award, coming up, and my buddy Corey Eckenroth, he's going to be helping me this year work on that Brett Kiesel Award, and we got some great candidates this year. So everybody will want to tune in for that and vote and see who's going to win that thing. And because I get excited about those guys. I get excited about the guys that come out of nowhere and they overachieve and make the roster and they turn out. I mean, if they turn out to be half the player Brett Kiesel was, the Steelers would be thrilled. Everybody talks about Logan Lee, the 6th-round pick out of Iowa, and he does remind me a lot of young Brett Kiesel. And so I'd love to see him have a really good preseason and be in the running, because that's who he reminds me of. He just had to improve the beard.
There you go. There you go. Start growing that out, young man. Start growing it out. That'd be interesting, man. I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing who ends up winning that. Any dark horse, players to look out for that could end up winning that nobody's talking about?
Well, I think that this year it's funny. Like last year, there really wasn't a lot of candidates, and Spencer Anderson took it home because of his versatility and making the roster, and nobody's seen that coming. But this year, you got Corey Trice is eligible, and we're all hoping that Corey Trice is going to you not only make the roster but contribute. You got Logan Lee, you got Ryan Watts, who I think can play a little slot and some safety, and I think he's going to be a gunner on special teams. I expect him to make this roster. He'll be a great gunner and very underrated. He's a great athlete and a very tenacious, hard-nosed player. Beanie Bishop, the undrafted cornerback out of West Virginia, who I'm very familiar with. I think people's going to love him because he's Mike Hilton 2.0, but much faster and much better at coverage. So there's some great candidates right there. So it's going to be a very interesting competition this year.
It'll be one to keep your eye on. Make sure you go and check that out at steelcurtainnetwork.com. There's not been a lot of news here recently. The one headline that I saw not too long ago was that Cam Hayward hates that the Steelers are going to be on Hard Knocks this year. How do you think that Hard Knocks is going to have an effect on the players during that most important time of the season while the Steelers are going in on their stretch? Multiple AFC North games.
The only way I'm nervous about it is if things are not going well in Pittsburgh. Like if they're having problems at the quarterback position, if George Pickens is unhappy with the amount of targets he's getting, you know what I'm saying? With some of the more dramatic players, it could be a little bit of a distraction. It could be like if they air their dirty laundry on Hard Knocks, that will not go over well with the Rooneys or Mike Tomlin. Mm-hmm. And we don't want that. Like if it had been last year with all that going on with Kenny Pickett and all that, that would have been a complete disaster. And so hopefully this year things will be smoother. Like I loved it when James Harrison was with the Bengals and they did Hard Knocks, and the looks he gave them camera guys, and they were all scared of him, and he wouldn't talk to them at all, and it was awesome. And I expect that you'll see some of the Steeler guys, because they're going to want to talk to Cam Hayward, and he don't want the distraction. They're going to want to talk to T.J. Watt, and they're going to try to focus on him because he's the best defender on the planet. Mm-hmm. But but I'm afraid that they're going to try to create a little drama, even if there ain't drama there. So hopefully they'll get drama from the Bengals and the Browns and the Ravens, and the Steelers. They're just, it'll just be about football.
Only one can hope that it's just about football. With a team that, I'll be honest with you, has been drama filled for a few years in a row.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see if they finally turn that ship around. I think if the Steelers are winning and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, it's going to be a great experience. If the Steelers are losing, it's probably going to be the opposite. I mean, that's going to be it based on that alone. And I think that if they're winning, the only drama that we're going to see is maybe some Bolton, material between the Steelers and whatever teams are playing. I think that there are some very confident players on the Steelers that aren't afraid to speak their mind. And so I wouldn't be surprised if some things come out. There you go. So
he's going to be like, I'm going to shut down Jamar Chase. I'm going to shut him down. Yeah, I'll tell you two things I think will happen. Mike Tomlin, he'll be like, I'm effing working here, people. Tomlin's going to give somebody that. And then we're going to see AB magically appear in the facilities to get a little spotlight. Because he won't be able to stay away. He dreamed about being, on Hard Knocks in Pittsburgh. He wanted that because that was, that was right down his alley. So I figure he'll break into the facilities, and you'll see him chasing him around the practice field. The security.
Hopefully he'll have his clothes on this time while he's
please.
Oh man, that would be interesting to see. I mean, not that, just the Hard Knocks show.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch Hard Knocks.
Oh, I am. Yes.
Win or lose, I'm gonna watch it. I'm a junkie for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so it doesn't matter what's on. I'm gonna tune in. I don't know how it's going to portray them or how it's going to portray the team, but in the end, Steelers are winning. Who cares? Do you think this is a one and done for this team, or do you think they'll end up doing it again if it ends up going well for this team?
No, I don't think they wanted to do it at all. I think it was they're like, HBOs, how can we get the Steelers on there? We had an opportunity one year and we didn't take advantage of it. And we might not get another opportunity for a while. And they're like, oh, I know what we could do. We'll do an end season and have the focus on the whole division. I mean, ain't nobody honestly care what the Cleveland Browns are doing. I'll just be honest. Ain't
That's
nobody tuning in for that. Now, they'll tune in for Joe Burrow. Joe Cool. He'll have on his, he's like Joe Namath Jr., the way he dresses and the way he acts. They'll want to focus on him a little bit. And, everybody wants to focus on the Ravens. But they wanted this show because they wanted the Steelers. Let's just be honest.
That's true. I don't think it was necessarily they didn't take advantage of it the last time. I think the Steelers found a way not to be a part of it the last time.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is probably going to be their most watched or viewed in series, just because it's the multiple teams, but mainly because it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. They have the best fan base in the world. I know that the announcers like to say that the Steelers fans travel. It's not so much they travel; they're just already everywhere.
Why do they say that all the time? That's another, like we talked when we opened the show, statements that are continuously made.
Yeah.
I mean, you go anywhere and they're Steelers fans.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, like when they play in LA and half the stadium was Steeler fans, is because there's that many Steeler fans in LA or in the surrounding area. You don't go anywhere. If that isn't a sellout in a really popular home team, it's going to be half Steeler fans because that's just how it is.
Yeah, even in some of the stadiums that are well known to be a powerhouse stadium that's going to keep in everything. Like, for instance, I went to go see the Steelers play the New Orleans Saints in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Juju fumble game. Bad pass interference game too.
Yes.
It was a horrible year because I also went to go see them play the at the time San Diego Chargers, and that was the false start game or the offsides on the kickoff.
On the block kick,
yeah. I did not need to go to games that year, but you know what? I blamed it on my brothers because I went to those games with my little brothers, and they have not seen the Steelers win ever, so they are no longer allowed to go to games.
They're the jinx.
They're the jinx. Yes, they are. But when we went to New Orleans and we were in that stadium, it was probably about 70% Saints, and there was a good chunk of Steelers fans in there. And some of the Saint fans were like, because it was overpowering the Saints. I mean, that's what it was. But the Saint fans were like, man, there's a lot of Steeler fans here. There's more Steeler fans at that game than any other team that had at those games, maybe outside of the Dallas Cowboys, and that's because they're so close in proximity. I think Dallas.
I got to admit something. Two things. Last year, one of the most embarrassed I ever was as a Steeler fan was how many San Francisco 49er fans were at that game last year. Not only did the Steelers get blown out, but the fans got embarrassed because even when that game was early, the Niners fans were louder. They were more enthusiastic. And it was shameful. All the people that sold their seats to Niners fans, I just did not like it. Not for the first home game of the year. And you thought the team had a chance to be better based on the preseason. Of course, it was wrong. But, and I'll tell you something else, and I want to say this. I do multiple podcasts, and you do as well. And I'll be honest, I have never went to another team's site and watched the podcast. I've never went to a Ravens site. I've never went to a Cowboy site. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I only watch other Steeler podcasts because I'm a Steeler fan, and I want to talk to other Steeler fans. Now, I'm noticing more and more that we get a lot of Browns fans, we get Bengals fans, we get, and hey, that's great. I don't understand why you'd want to come and listen to me talk trash about your team because I don't like them and I don't respect them, and I don't get it because I could care less what you're saying about the Steelers. That's why I don't go and watch those podcasts. I watch Steelers stuff because I want to be with like-minded individuals. So we have a lot of people that like to come in and and try to create some hoopla and all, talking about putting down the Steelers, and I guess they get something out of doing that. I don't get it, but I will say this: I've never went to anybody else, another team's site, and talk smack, because that's ridiculous. The whole thing is they hate us because they ain't us, and it's Pittsburgh Steelers here, black and gold baby forever, and that's what you're always going to hear, and probably a lot of it will be negative towards whatever team you like.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some people like to live off the pain, man.
I guess. I don't know. I don't get it.
Some people like to do some weird things, man. And I remember the Browns didn't they do like a parade when they went 0-16? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you expect out of their fan base? I mean, if they're willing to do that, I mean, I'm just saying.
But they're still some of the most delusional fans I've ever met. And there is real Browns fans. I have some friends, close friends, and they love the Browns, and they're legit.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also realistic. They're like, man, I mean, they're scared to get too happy, even when things are going good, because they remember Elway, they remember Biner's fumble, they remember, all these, 0-16, 17, whatever, all these bad things, but they're realistic. But then you have the ones that are delusional. And those are the ones that are like, well, Myles Garrett's the scariest player out there. I mean, you know how many times he gets close to getting the quarterback sacks? That's just as good as a real sack. Yeah. It's like, I feel like I'm watching Dumb and Dumber. Hey, I left you a whole suitcase full of IOUs. It's just as good as money.
Yeah.
I think we're dealing with Dumb and Dumber here.
It seems like it, man. It seems like it, especially with the Defensive Player of the Year award last season.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And when they put up his stats, and he didn't even come in top 3 in majority of the stats. I think he was top 6, 7 in sacks, defended passes, tackles, things of that nature. Number 1 was TJ Watt across the board, but can't give it him too many times. They got to give somebody else.
Yeah, but he already lost it to Aaron Donald 3 times. And 2 of those years, I think TJ had the better statistics. And I ain't taking nothing away from Aaron Donald. He was a great player also. But now you had, TJ won it. He had to, tie the all-time record to win it. And then the next year, he had statistically last year the best season of any defender. It wasn't even close. And he still didn't win it. So, I mean, what's the guy got to do?
Well, I think that obviously, this is my opinion. I think that there was the NFL wants to get Myles Garrett into the Hall of Fame. Now, the Browns aren't going to win a Super Bowl anytime soon, so that's not going to happen. He's not going to be a champion. So the only way they can do that is if they give him some sort of participation trophy for Defensive Player of the Year, so that way he has some sort of accolade when it comes down to the Hall of Fame inductee list or whatever, and they can justify why they want to put him in. That's all it is.
I'm old enough to remember Lyle Alzado. Now, Lyle Alzado was a hothead. He was a fun player to watch. He was a tough player, a great player. He really was. But, he got a reputation. What that was, he took a guy's helmet off and tried to hit him with it. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
And I remember the rest of his career, he was hated. The media, they thought he was just a terrible, bad guy, and they made him out to be that. Myles Garrett does the same thing to a quarterback. Lyle Alzado did it to an offensive lineman, at least somebody big enough to defend himself. Garrett does it to Mason Rudolph, and he wins an award he didn't even deserve. And they, like you said, they're trying to make him out to be something that he's not. It's crazy the difference, how times have changed. One guy was forever labeled dirty, and you couldn't be a fan of his, even though I liked him with the Raiders. I didn't care. I thought, I like guys that are physical, but not with Garrett. It's like it never happened. Everybody forgets about it.
Yeah, well, they did that one piece on him where he was wearing glasses and he was looking at paintings and was like a philosopher. They did that just to try to clean up his image right afterwards. And I'm like, why are you trying to do that? This man could have killed him.
Yeah,
he could have. I mean, if that helmet hits one way or another, it could have done some more damage than it did. And now you're trying to clean up his image.
He's a philanthropist. He's a thinker. I'm surprised it didn't have him doing the thinking pose.
It was on the deleted scenes. It
Yeah,
was in the deleted scenes.
yeah, yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't understand. I don't understand what's the fascination with that team in the NFL that wants that team to succeed. I don't know. Maybe it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame being out there or something. I don't get it. I
But do
don't
you
get.
remember when the Red Sox hadn't won in 100 years, whatever, and the
Mhm.
Cubs hadn't won? Boy, everybody wanted the Red Sox and the Cubs to win. I
Yeah.
mean, all the media. And once they both won, now it's died down. Nobody cares anymore. Now, who's the all-time loser now? I mean, in any sport, it's basically, well, the Clippers ain't never won nothing. But people forget the Clippers are even there. It's Cleveland.
Yeah.
And so everybody's rooting for Cleveland. We're rooting for the underdogs, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some friends back in the day that weren't really into football, and they decided to, or they were, and decided to change their team, and they said, we're gonna go for the Browns because we like their colors, and I think they're gonna do well. So you're making a bad mistake, but go ahead. And
Yep.
they've regretted it ever since. Ugh, I don't know. I mean, I can just talk crap about the Browns all day,
Well,
but
I got us off track, but I see some things in the comments, and sometimes I just don't understand,
yeah,
and I got to vent for a second. So I appreciate everybody letting me vent.
there you go, there you go. Yeah, no, man, yeah, I've seen it too. I've seen the divisional rivals fan base come into the comment section of the live chat, and it is kind of confusing. You know, um, the only time that I've ever seen anything that has to do with another team on as far as the podcast is when it's like a group of podcasters that are talking about the entire AFC North.
Exactly. Yes, like the
You know,
homies.
exactly,
Yeah, that makes
exactly.
sense. Yes, yes.
So those channels are the ones that are those podcasts are the ones that I'll tune into, and it's good. It's good insight on your opponent and things of that nature. When to kind of see what your team is gonna, how they're gonna defend certain things or attack certain places, and you can see that translate onto the field. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to go and troll, but that's what they do. It's just a troll.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I mean, we want viewers, but I mean, I want the viewers to get something from what we're trying to say and trying to, you know, relate and inform our audience with.
Yeah.
That's why we're here doing this, and it just seems like it's like, what are they actually getting from it? I don't understand. But hopefully it's entertaining. I'll say something stupid and people can laugh about it. I'll mispronounce somebody's name and they can
Yeah.
take another drink. There's the drinking game because me and Big E, we can't pronounce people's last names a lot of times if it's got more than two syllables. So people, they take a drink every time we screw that up. So I'm sure it can be fun that way.
Hey, so I saw this, one last thing before we call this a show. I saw this thing on the Twitterverse or the Xverse, where it talked about, it was a chart there. It referred yards after contact per attempt. This is for running backs
Oh, I see
and
that with
and
Jalen
missed
Warren.
tackles per attempt. And you had Najee Harris kind of in the middle of the pack, but all by himself, all the way to the end as far as
Yep.
the best in one position, all the way to the top, which is the best in the other. Is Jalen Warren sitting by himself?
It wasn't even close.
Not even
Not
close.
even close. Yes.
Does this? Steelers didn't sign Najee to his 5th-year option. Do you think that maybe perhaps we're going to see maybe the pendulum swing a little bit? Maybe we're going to get more Jalen than Naj.
You have to kind of believe that's one reason why they didn't take up that 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm.
The Steelers knew about this long before that chart come out.
Yeah.
Know that their analytics department, they's like, hey guys, this is what Warren is doing. Now again, he's doing it in different circumstances than carrying on first and second down a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
He's not as successful, especially against the stack box. Whereas Harris was he broke a lot of tackles too, but he drug guys because he's just a bigger running back than Warren. But they said that it's against a 7-man box, that when they record these separate plays and these broken tackles, and it shows explosiveness. But it showed how Warren is so hard to tackle, not just because of the way he's built, which is unique, a bowling ball with legs. But you think about how many times did he dive over or flip through the air or whatever when he get anywhere close to a first down, and he get it, and he's just got that dog in him, and he's fearless. And so I think that the Steelers are really looking at this, and they're saying, "Hey, we're if we're going to pay somebody starting money, where they might be looking at keeping Warren next year and letting Harris walk and get him somebody else free agent or through the draft."
Yeah, I think there's a good possibility of that. Looking at that chart and saying, Jalen Warren, he's been in some situations also where he's been in a stack box. Now, it hasn't been as frequent as Najee Harris, but even in those situations, even when he's gotten hit in the backfield, he's somehow found a way to get positive yards. It's very few and far in between times where he's hit for a loss or hit on the first or knocked down on the first contact. And so, I mean, he could be a guy. And if he's doing this and he's producing these type of numbers, start off half and half, 50-50, but if you can't, the stats don't lie, and you got to play accordingly, in my opinion. I don't think
definitely.
you can't play favorites.
One question I want to ask you is, I've seen a lot in different comments on different shows and everything when I'll talk about Jalen Warren, is people talk about him having a fumbling problem. And I don't remember. Now, I remember he fumbled last year that one time when Deontay Johnson didn't even try to get the ball. He didn't try to pick it up. I think it was against the Bengals. And he might have fumbled in the preseason. But, I mean, I remember 2 or 3 fumbles in the season both years. I don't consider that a fumbling problem. Now, I have not looked up that statistic, but just going off memory, I don't consider him a fumbler. Do you?
I don't think so, but I think that stigma has stuck with him because I think in his first training camp in the beginning,
he had trouble in training camp.
He had trouble, and they forced him to carry the ball around. And back then, that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So still kind of in certain times, and so a lot of people were really invested into sports news. It was just kind of coming back as far as that goes, and I think everybody just kind of looked into the fact that he had a fumbling problem then, but when it translated into the regular season, I think there's been 2 or 3. I think you're right. I can think of 2 or 3 off the top of my head. I don't necessarily consider that a fumbling problem. However, when you look at his counterpart there in Najee Harris, I think it's been 1 in the last 4 years.
No, I think he had. I remember 3 he'd put on the ground last year.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how many he lost, but no, he doesn't fumble. Najee Harris. But I've told people, anybody's ever played, pressure points on the ball. When you're 6'2", almost 6'3", like Harris, you could get the pressure point here and here.
Yeah.
And it's, and you got a good grip on that ball. When you're, more 5'7", 5'8", whatever Warren is, this forearm is shorter. And if you ever watch when Warren is carrying the ball, he's got the pressure point here, but the football's up on his bicep.
Yeah.
And he has large biceps. And that ball is, if you get hit just right, it's just going to squirt out. It's going to pop out. So it's more, your more common fumblers are a lot of times your shorter guys.
That makes a lot of sense. We have some folks, I'm going to take their word for it, in the live chat saying that he had 5 fumbles, that he had 2 in the raining game last season. I think that is correct. In the
that was ugly.
Yeah.
I think they were in the first half, if I remember.
The entire team played.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no! In the rain game with the Rabbits, no, the Steelers played okay in that game. I think he played bad. And is in the Bills playoff game when the Steelers just offensively, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth probably should have had a fumble. Mason Rudolph interception. It was just one mistake after another, and still yet they
still had a chance.
They still had a chance.
Yeah.
But they just kind of, I think the moment was too big for some of those players. I'll tell you what, the George Pickens, the Pat Freiermuths of the world, those guys that were there, Broderick Jones, that stage is not too big for them anymore.
No.
They've seen it. They've seen it. Well, Shannon, do you got any final words for everybody before we call it a show?
No, I think it's been interesting. I get a little passionate sometimes, and enjoy getting to vent with our community and appreciate each of you. And but I think it's getting to us, Daniel. We're getting closer. It's been too long, and I am ready to get back to some actual, training camp. I'm just looking forward to see him walking into the dorms, just and seeing how everybody looks. I remember last year, I thought Dan Moore, you could see his development, that he'd put a lot of work in his upper body, and he had a little bit of like baby fat, in his upper body, and you've seen that he really worked on that, and I expected a better season, but I think he's peaked out, to what he's going to be. I seen that somebody said they think he has the inside track for right tackle. I think that'll be a mistake, because you have an easier schedule early. Get Fatanu in there and let him start to get his experience so that he'll be ready for that playoff push late in the year. But everybody should be excited, because training camp's right around the corner.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I can't wait for it to start. I can't wait to start seeing and hearing about the news that are coming out and the footage that comes out from training camp. Guys, we're going to be covering it here on Steel Curtain Network and at our website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go and check that out. If you're tuning to this on Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star rating. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, ring that notification button. Steel Curtain Network will be back live tomorrow night with the Big Bros Go show. You don't want to miss it. Shannon, take us out, my man.